There we go. Hello, this is Ian Noel Camilotes for Centertainment Media, and this is ChatterBox. Hello again, this is Ian Camilotes from Centertainment Media, and I'm here with Jennie Kwan.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
So, of course, we're here at Anime Magic. You're one of the voice acting guests here, but voice acting is not what you started with. Well, you kind of did.
Kind
of. So, and one of the roles, you did mention it before, and it was one of the ones that I had keyed in on because I'm a huge fan of the actual musical, but it was Little Shop of Horrors, but it was called Little Shop. It was on, the cartoon, right?
It was called Little Shop, and I voiced the character, the singing voice of Audrey, and that is because they had cast the speaking voice originally to someone else, and then they had learned that she couldn't sing, so they were like, oh man. So not only was I the singing voice, I had to voice match to the actual character's voice.
Gotcha.
So for those of you who don't know what voice matching is, for example, when someone has already started a character, say that the character was like a kid when they started, but their voice started to change. So they have to match the voice to the original character. So basically I had to sing and voice match the original character that they hired.
And this was Audrey, the character, not the plant. Audrey, not Audrey too.
Not the plant. No,
so,
the actual person, not the plant.
Yeah, and it's very different too because I remember watching that cartoon and it was
really?
very bizarre. Yeah, I was young when I saw it. And
I was young too.
And it was very bizarre because it didn't match the movie because the movie here it's the Broadway show,
right?
Whereas
and
the cartoon,
it's a series.
Yeah, it's like what they did with Beetlejuice. You've got the villain who's now the best friend of the main character. So. Now, how did you get that role? Because that was especially starting off young. How did you?
Yeah,
get that?
I mean, just like the other roles, I auditioned for that role, and they heard me and they thought, oh, she could match this voice. So back in the day, we would go to our agent's office and we would record, or we would do lines, or we would go to a casting office in person. This was way pre-COVID days. So we could go in person, and that's the way that we just did things back then.
Okay. As you were growing up then, it wasn't just voice acting. You were doing a lot of acting.
On camera, theater.
So what were some of the key roles on camera that you remember?
Maybe, this happens to me a lot, but when people come to conventions, the kids are like, we know you as Suki from Avatar, but my mom knows you as Samantha Wu from California Dreams. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been doing this a long time. So I was on a TV show called California Dreams, which was on NBC, and I did a bunch of different sort of films and everything throughout the years, and yeah, so.
Okay. And then you did stage acting as well. So what was the role? Was Kim from Miss Saigon?
I played the role of Kim in Miss Saigon. That's the lead. And then I did a musical called Avenue Q.
The puppets.
Yep, the puppets. I know how to puppeteer. Bobby Lopez and Jeff Marks wrote the musical. And then I also did another musical called Bear, which went to off-Broadway, and that was in the early 2000s. So yeah.
Okay, so a lot of Broadway experience there too.
Yeah.
Do you draw on some of your Broadway experience whenever you do either live acting or voice acting?
Absolutely. I mean, I think all acting lends to each other, right? And what I always tell people who want to get into voice acting, what do you need to do? What do you need to know how to do? You need to know how to act. Because it's not only about the voice, the acting is what carries you through. And so, be it theater, be it TV and film, those skills are useful to every genre. I just tell people, because they're like, well, it's so different. Yes, each one is very different, but if you have the acting foundation, hopefully, and again, I've been very, very fortunate to be able to cross different genres, but it's kind of like, say that one day you want to do a comedy,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're still going to use the same acting skills. Drama, I always have been taught, you know, you play comedy like you play drama, like straight and all the way through, and you commit to it, right? And so, you know, just for myself, with my own experience, I've just drawn from the foundations of acting, you know, and learned that each thing is its own genre. And along the way, for example, in VO, it's so fast. It's so fast. And so I had one acting teacher who would remind us, she's like, all your emotions are at your fingertips. You know, sometimes you learn, you know, you do your background and you do that kind of work, like for theater and all that sort of thing. But this one teacher was like, all your emotions are at your fingertips. And that's kind of the way I am anyway. I'm real, you know, what's the word, mercurial, where things change. You know, we're human. Like 1 minute we're like, oh my gosh, I gotta get to this appointment, and you might be panicked, and the next minute you're like relieved, right, if something happens. Or, you know, you may get a phone call that kind of, you know, upsets you. You know, like, we are human. We just kind of, we change, you know, like as we go through the day even. Or maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm just crazy. But yeah, we're always constantly changing,
evolving and changing
and
everything
with the situation at hand. So same thing, the way that I think about that with acting too, especially with VO, because time is money when you get into the booth, and they don't have time to, you know, teach you how to act. And so I think there's a lot of misconception there for people. Well, it's like, well, I want to become a voice actor. I'm like, then you got to know how to do things fast and follow direction and know how to take direction, because they're not there to do 50,000 takes. You know, like maybe on a big project, you know, sure, but a lot of the times for video games or for dubbing or for animation even, like, it moves fairly quickly.
Okay. Does your agent then help you find the different roles,
Yes.
whether it's on camera, Broadway, or even voice acting?
Yes. So I've had an agent, you know, since I started acting since I was a kid. But yeah, for the majority, they find all the just the leads on different jobs.
Okay. Which do you prefer doing more lately? Is it more the voice acting or more the on-screen?
I mean, again, like, it's so different. Like, I love voice acting because now these days I can do it from my booth, you know, from home, and people are like, can you wear your pajamas? And I'm like, you can, until you learn that, oops, they're turning on their camera, and you're like, oh gosh, you know what I mean? But I still have an affinity for on-camera acting, you know, that too, and live acting. Like, they're also different with live acting. You don't get another chance. You gotta, you know, express what you need to express on that first time, and if something goes awry, you just go with it. So I think, you know, I've really learned a lot of discipline from these different sort of genres of acting. Live performances, for sure, teaches you so much discipline. So I've learned that.
When it comes to voice acting roles, what are some of the differences really with something that's like an animated show versus video games?
Okay, so for example, I think I'm allowed to say it right now with everything going on, but I play a few characters in a Disney pre-K show called Super Kitties, and it's super cute, just like it sounds, Super Kitties. It's super cute, and for the most part doesn't really require any sort of vocal stress. For video games, you do what's called efforts, which means either you're kicking, or you're pushing, or you're jumping, or you're killing, or you're dying, which requires a lot of sound effects with your voice, and that can get, you know, that can get taxing on your voice for anybody. It doesn't matter who it is. You know, if you're dying 10 different ways, you're dying 10 different ways, and if you're into it, it makes such a difference the way it comes through.
And there's a lot of those in video games, because
especially
the action, whereas
oh yeah,
shows, you're just following the script if there needs to be that.
Sure, except for Avatar 2, my character Suki, she was a warrior, so there was a lot of fighting scenes with that. So it was a combination between animation, anime, and fighting for me, because my character fought, you know.
Gotcha. Okay. Are there any particular roles that you're most proud of, or that you enjoy doing?
I mean, that is a question I get asked a lot, and I'm like, they're all my babies, I'm not going to play favorites, you know, type of thing.
Well, are there any ones that you feel are the most challenging for you to do?
Oh man, I mean, I wouldn't say challenging, but I think whenever I have to do a lot of efforts and a lot of dying and a lot of
Video game ones.
yeah, like as the actor, I really have to learn how to protect my voice, and that is something that is a true statement for any voiceover actor. They would know what I'm talking about.
Now that I'm thinking about it, like some of those efforts, you're doing voices too that are not even, doesn't sound like proper voice technique, but because of the action that's going on, you have to be able to do that.
Right, and especially if you're playing like a monster, or, you know, they don't all sound like this, right? They have their own specific sounds, and if it's you know, non-human, you know, who knows what comes out. People are creative, you know, the way that they go about creating characters.
Gotcha. Well, one of my favorite questions I love to ask a lot of my guests that I interview is what advice, especially because your body of work is just so big in terms of, and big of array too, it's not just one streamline thing, but what advice do you have that for anyone that wants to get into acting as a whole? Because we're not just talking about voice acting, we're talking about on-screen acting, which is different, and even Broadway and stage acting too.
Well, what I would say to anybody who wants to get into this, into show business is, again, it's a business, but your part in knowing how to act is probably the main thing, right? Not only knowing how to act, but also I would say it's a frame of mind, right? Like I said, I've started when I was a kid, and I've gone through so many different phases of acting, right? So here I am doing a lot of voice acting today. But who knows? Tomorrow, you know, I sorry, I can't talk anymore. I may end up on another TV show, right? And there's no overnight success, sorry. Like, sometimes it does happen, but overnight success is like someone who's put 10 years into it, right? Like, look at Taylor Swift. She just sold out how many nights in, you know, wherever she is, where I'm from, Los Angeles, 6 nights. But she started when she was a kid. She's, you know, grown her body of work, constantly putting the work into it. And I mean, I would say if you want to get into it, it's not an overnight thing. You know, like if you want to stay in it in a long time, and maybe, you know, if you want to get into voice acting. When I got back into voice acting, it took some time for people to hear my work. So for example, now, like when I get booked on jobs, they're like, Jennie, oh my gosh, we're so happy that we finally get to work on you. Your audition has come through across my desk or in my ears like so many times, and I didn't know that. You know, I'm just thinking it's out there, and like, I don't know if they've heard it. I don't know, especially in this day and age. Like, I didn't know, but the fact that they're like, we've heard your audition so many times, we're finally happy that the client has decided to cast you in such and such role.
Gotcha.
So again, not an overnight success.
Just got to take patience.
Yeah, a lot of patience and a lot of determination and a lot of persistence, a lot of tenacity to stick with it.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for taking the time to speak with us.
Yeah.
This is Ian Camilotes for Centertainment Media, and thank you for listening.